Hello, my name is Phelan Kane and I am both an Ableton certified trainer and a Max certified trainer. In this video, we'll be building the Clip Launch Hack Max for Live device. This device utilises some of the new features of the API and the Live Object model available in Ableton Live 11. As this tool is a Max for Live device, you will need a copy of Live Suite 11. Max for Live is included in Live Suite, but is also available as an additional add-on for Live Standard. Visit ableton.com for more details. In a fresh new Live set, let's open the browser and navigate to the Max for Live category. Open the Max for Live audio effect folder and drag and drop an instance of the Max audio effect template onto a blank MIDI track. In the device view, click on the Edit button to launch the Max for Live environment. This actually launches Max. Let's resize our patcher window to full screen. This is where we will patch the various objects together that will make up our device. We can see we have a plugin tilde and plug out tilde object already in our patch. As this is a Max for Live audio effect, this will allow the audio from any devices inserted in our chain to pass through our device and back to Live. We need these objects in our patch. Let's zoom into our patcher window with the zoom tool in the top left-hand corner. To access different parameters in our Live set, we need to define some paths via the LOM. Press N for new, type live.path and press return. This creates the object we will use to navigate through the LOM. Create a message box by pressing M. Inside the message box, type the expression path space live_set space tracks space $1 space clip_slots space $2 space clip. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the message box and connect it to the inlet of the live.path object. Press N for new and type live.numbox and press return. Select the live.numbox object and open the inspector via the eye icon on the right-hand side of the toolbar. The inspector is where we can configure properties of our Max objects. Ensure we are viewing all the inspector parameters for the live.numbox by clicking on the All tab. Scroll down to the parameters section and locate the range/enum parameter. Double-click and change the values in this parameter to 1/127. This sets the minimum and maximum values for the live.numbox. Activate the checkbox next to Initial Enable, and if you need to, set the initial value parameter to 1. This sets the live.numbox to have a default value of 1 when the device is loaded into a live set. This number box will represent the track within our live path that we wish to focus on. Close the inspector via the eye icon on the right-hand side of the toolbar. Press N for new and type the minus symbol followed by a space and the number 1. Press return. We have created a subtraction object with an argument of 1. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the live.numbox and connect it to the first inlet of the subtraction object. Press N for new and type pack, P-A-K, and press return. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the subtraction object and connect it to the first inlet of the pack object. Select the live.numbox and the subtraction object and copy-paste them. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the copied subtraction object and connect it to the second inlet of the pack object. The second live.numbox will represent the clip slot within our live path that we wish to focus on. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the pack object and connect it to the first inlet of the message box. Computers usually start counting from 0, not 1. The subtraction object allows us to use the live.num boxes in a more human way. When we select track 1 or clip slot 1, we are actually selecting track 0 or clip slot 0, as the LOM counts from 0. The pack object combines the numbers that represent the track number and the clip slot number into a list. This list is then passed to the message box. The $1 and $2 text in the message box are dynamic variables. This means their contents are replaced with the incoming values from the live number boxes. So if we select track 1, clip slot 1, the message will actually read path live_set tracks 0 clip_slots 0 clip. This confusing message will be transmitted onto the live.path object. It navigates through the LOM. For example, our message will have the instructions in this live set, find the first track and locate the first clip slot and focus on that clip. This is a good example of how the LOM can be navigated in Max for Live. Press N for new and type live.tab and press return. We are going to use this graphical user interface object to allow our user to select the clip's launch mode. Select the live.tab object and open the inspector via the eye icon on the right-hand side of the toolbar. Ensure that we are viewing all the inspector parameters for the live.tab by clicking on the All tab. Scroll down to the parameters section and locate the range/enum parameter. Click the Edit button and in the floating window that appears, type trigger space gate space toggle space repeat. Make sure you include the spaces. The live.tab should now display the choices for the launch modes. Resize the live.tab by dragging the bottom right-hand corner to the right and make sure you can read all the text in the tab clearly. Press M for message to create a new message box. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the first outlet of the live.tab object and connect it to the first inlet of the message box. Make another patch cable from the first outlet of the live.tab object and connect it to the second inlet of the message box. The live.tab outputs a number that represents the user's choice. In the bottom left-hand corner of the patcher window, click on the padlock icon to lock the patch. When the patch is locked, we can interact with the patch as a user or a musician. When the patch is unlocked, we interact with the patch as a builder or developer. Click onto each option in the live.tab. You should see the message box is filled with a number that represents your selection. 0 for trigger, 1 for gate, etc. This works as we are transmitting the number into the message box via its second inlet. In the bottom left-hand corner of the patcher window, click on the padlock icon to unlock the patch. We are now back in builder mode. Press N for new and type live.property space launch_mode space at observe space 1. Make sure you include the spaces and don't make a typo. Max is often case sensitive. The live.property is not a Max object, it's an abstraction that already exists on your computer. It's part of the awesome Max for Live API tutorials that are installed as part of Live Suite. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the message box and connect it to the first inlet of the live.property abstraction. The expressions launch_mode at observe 1 are arguments. These can be used to determine how objects or abstractions function. In the bottom left-hand corner of the patcher window, click on the padlock icon to lock the patch. We can now interact with the patch as a user or musician. Double-click on the live.property abstraction. We can now see inside. This looks complicated, but in short, we will be sending a number that represents the launch mode into the first inlet, and the LOM ID number from a path into the second inlet. This should then change the launch mode parameter for our selected clip. This is a good example of how we can use some of the existing tools available inside Max for Live to access the LOM without having to build things from scratch. Thanks, Ableton. Close the live.property patcher window. In the bottom left-hand corner of the patcher, click on the padlock icon to unlock the patch. Select the live.tab we made earlier and copy-paste it. Visit the inspector for the copy and in the parameter section, locate the range/enum parameter. Click the Edit button and in the floating window that appears, type 1/8 space 1/16 space 1/32. Make sure you include the spaces. The live.tab should now display the choices for the clip's quantization. Resize the new live.tab by dragging the bottom right hand corner and make sure you can read all the text in the tab clearly. Press N for new and type cell space 0 space 1 space 2. Make sure you include the spaces. Resize the new cell object by dragging the bottom right hand corner of the object to the right. Press M for message, enter the number 10 into the message box. Press M for message again and enter the number 12. Create a third message box with the number 14 inside. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the first outlet of the cell object and connect it to the first inlet of the message box containing 10. Click and drag to create a second patch cable from the second outlet of the cell object and connect it to the first inlet of the message box containing 12. Click and drag again to create another patch cable from the third outlet of the cell object and connect it to the first inlet of the message box containing 14. Press N for new and type live.property space launch underscore quantization space at observe space 1. Make sure you include the spaces and don't make a typo. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlets of each message box into the first inlet of our new live.property abstraction. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the first outlet of our live.tab into the first inlet of the cell object. The cell object is also known as a selector object. When a user clicks on the live.tab and selects 1/8, the live.tab transmits a 0. Remember, computers count from 0. The cell object receives the 0 and fires a bang out of outlet 1. This then triggers the message 10, which is sent into our live.property abstraction. Similarly, when the user clicks on the live.tab and selects 1/16, the live.tab transmits a 1. The cell object receives the 1 and fires a bang out of outlet 2. This then triggers the message 12, which is sent into our live.property abstraction. You can probably guess what happens when the user clicks on 1/32. You probably have realised that we're only using a few of the quantization options for the clip, and there are loads more. You can customise the device by adding as many quantization options to the live.tab as you like. There are 15 available. You could add all 15, but remember to count from 0. So the first quantization option should be global, which transmits the message 0. The second option, none, which transmits the message 1. Have a look inside the clip properties in Live to see the options. Press N for new and type live.toggle. A toggle is a button that is either on or off. Press N for new and type live.property space legato space at observe space 1. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of live.toggle into the first inlet of our new live.property abstraction. We are nearly there. Next, we need to set up the data for the second inlets of the live.property abstractions. This represents the actual path inside the LOM that leads to our clips. Press M for message. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of the message box into the second inlet of all of our live.property abstractions. There should be 3 patch cables. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the first outlet of the live.path object we made earlier into the first inlet of our message box. Click and drag again to create a second patch cable from the first outlet of the live.path object into the second inlet of the message box. The second inlet of a message box is used to populate the message. The first inlet is used to trigger or bang that message. Now, whenever a user selects a track or a clip slot, the LOM path ID is transmitted into the live.property abstractions. Whenever the user changes the launch mode or quantization values, we should make sure that we trigger again the path ID, otherwise we might have problems. Click and drag to create a patch cable from the outlet of both live.tabs and the live.toggle into the first inlet of the message box. We're now ready to tidy up our patch and test it. Press C for comment. A comment allows us to label parts of our patch for the user. Let's provide a comment for the launch, quantization, legato, track and clip parameters. Let's also make a comment to label our device. We can change the font and font size for the comments in the inspector. It's time to set up our GUI. If we right-click or control-click on any graphical user interface objects, we can add to presentation via the contextual menu. We should see an orange box around objects that have been added to presentation. Let's add to presentation our live.tabs, live.toggle, comments, and live.num boxes. Click onto the TV-shaped icon in the bottom left-hand corner of the toolbar. We are now in presentation mode, a mode especially for GUI layouts. Drag and drop your objects around and lay them out as you see fit. As a Max for Live device has a height restriction in Live's device view, it is important to place your objects up towards the top left-hand corner. Let's force our patch to open in presentation mode. This makes sure that the patch will present the GUI correctly when it is loaded from Live's browser. Ensure no objects are selected and right-click or control-click into the background of the patch. Select Inspector window from the contextual menu. This is the inspector for the whole patch. In the floating window that opens, click on the Basic tab and activate the checkbox for Open in Presentation. Close down the inspector window, and in presentation mode a line appears that symbolises the maximum height for a device in Live's device view. In Max's file menu, choose Save As. Max should automatically be pointing at a specific location to save your file, inside the Max Audio Effect folder, inside Audio Effects, inside Presets, inside your Ableton user library. It's recommended to use this path as it means your Max for Live device will show up in Live's browser. Give a name to your file and be aware that Max for Live devices have the file extension .amxd. Press Save. We can now close our patcher window and return to Live. Create a blank MIDI clip on our track. Let's test our device. Set the parameters accordingly and check to see if you can successfully change the launch mode, quantization and legato parameters. You should also be able to enter MIDI mapping mode and assign our device parameters to a MIDI control surface. If everything is working successfully, in the device view, click on the Edit button to open our device in Max. Leave presentation mode and make sure your patch is unlocked. We can now select all our important objects in our patch and copy and paste them. When you paste, do not click in the background to retain your selection, and you can drag your objects to a suitable location. Enter presentation mode and retain your selection and move the objects to a suitable layout. If you save and return to live, we can now independently hack into 2 clips in our live set. If you want to be able to hack into more clips simultaneously, just copy and paste the important objects again. After building this patch, the world is now your oyster, and you should be able to start experimenting with building your own patches that use the LOM and the Live API in interesting and novel ways. There is a wealth of information online about using the LOM. Until next time, happy patching.